I'm your king.
Well, I didn't vote for you.
Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
First time I've heard that this year.
Oh, yes, folks. This is the first episode of the Backwards History Podcast in 2021. And we all hoped that saying Jumanji at midnight in 2020 was going to fix everything. Jesus, we were wrong.
It was worth a shot.
It was the only thing we hadn't tried throughout the year, so I guess we needed to do it. But before we get into talking about the clusterfuck, and yes, I did use the F word, and I'll explain why here shortly. Before we do all that, want to do what I always do and tell you to go do those social media thingy things. Go like, share, subscribe. Go hook your boys up with a little bit of support on our Teespring at teespring.com/stores/backwards-history-store. Go pick you up a shirt. Go pick you up a hoodie. Go get you a Shut Up Kevin mask. Help us out. Do what you can. We would love to expand this podcast, and we can't do it without your support. But yes, it's 2021, and there's no flying cars. There's none of the fun technological shit that we hoped we were going to have. There's nothing but 1984 censorship, craziness, and yeah, we're not going to censor ourselves because we'll probably be censored by the tech bigwigs at some point anyway, because we have moderate views between both parties, but no one cares about that. So we're going to say what the fuck we want to say.
That's right.
Kevin, drop you a couple F's or something, I don't know.
All in good time.
But a lot of voices are being silenced right now. Some pretty significant voices as far as title anyway. And if they can silence them, they can silence anyone. But yeah, you know, around here we tried to keep things on the PG rating, PG-13 if it was a movie. And we've talked a long time about getting rid of the rating or worrying about the rating, and at this point we're both kind of at the point of not caring. So
Certainly feel like we've crossed into fuck it territory.
you're damn right. You know, a lot of you that have listened have voiced your opinions on mostly me not caring what I say. And you didn't know the half of it because a lot of it either got cut out in post or
Restrained.
I censored what I said, and Kevin too, you know.
Yeah.
But if we're going to be censored, we might as well be censored for saying exactly what we feel and how we feel about it. So,
Very fair.
here we go. There's a lot of fuckery going on in 2021.
We're not even a month in.
Right. And it's really weird. And I'm not sure where to look at things. This almost will be an episode similar to a quarantine rant, but since no one's under quarantine, or we're not, because we still live in free states, we're gonna have to come up with another title, but I'll figure that out later.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if this one's gonna have any well, I wouldn't say direct historical implications, because I'm sure that it does. But this is not going to be our typical episode of Kevin giving his historical read on things and me coming in. We're just going to have a conversation on the
Current state of affairs.
The shit show. The shit show that 2021 is already turning out to be, and we're only, halfway through the first month.
We had a good 3-day run there, though. I mean, it's not bad.
Truth.
Mm-hmm.
But, I guess we can start off with where, for lack of a better way to put it, things went wrong. January 6th, the day of the Electoral College votes being certified by Congress,
Uh-huh.
and Mike Pence presiding over the certifications of said votes. A lot of people, through Trump's rhetoric, thought that Pence might choose not to certify the votes from the states that were disputed,
Mm-hmm.
thus entering us into a situation that had been done in, I believe it was like 1887, where you would have a certain number of Republicans, certain number of Democrats, and a certain number of independents go into committee and then vote on those instances. I may be wrong. I may be way off. But Pence decided that it was more of a formality, which, given common practice, it is more of a formality to just go ahead and certify. Because we haven't had any issues quite that way since that time period. Other than the Bush-Gore election in 2000.
Yeah.
Which the Supreme Court actually chose to take up, which the Supreme Court this time decided not to for fear of riots, which I think is kind of a dereliction of duty in some part.
Yeah. Could definitely be viewed that way in some aspects.
And then some people decided that they wanted to. I'm trying to figure out what word to use because I don't feel like storm is the correct word, even though that's a buzzword being used by MSM right now.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that.
Anyway, they broke into the United States Capitol building. Broke a couple windows, a couple people got hurt. A veteran that was on the side of the infiltrators, for lack of a better word, was shot by Capitol Police. Apparently, a police officer was hit with a fire extinguisher. A couple people fell off of a balcony. Yada yada. Total loss of life is like 5 people and like 3 windows. Suddenly, it's an insurrection. Full-on terrorist attack on our capital. And I feel like that's bullshit. Kevin?
I was literally in a trench when I got the news of what had happened at the Capitol. Now, as longtime listeners of the podcast are aware, I work in archaeology, and I'm literally down in about a 2.5 foot trench, taking measurements along with another archaeologist, and our phones go off. It's I think it's Apple News Alert, and we both look at it and like, what the? I think it wording was pro-Trump rioters stormed the Capitol or something along those lines. And we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, "Oh, well, that's probably not good." um, and unfortunately, we were basically in the middle of nowhere working and weren't really able to access much information while the event was unfolding. So we're out in the middle of a sugarcane field, a couple of feet down in the ground, and it's just in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh, what's going on? What's happening? When you hear the Capitol has been, it's a buzzword, but the word they used was stormed, and you're like, oh, that's not good. And then you realize, oh wait, today's the day they certify the electoral votes, and you're like, oh, what's happening? Just lack of information made for a very long work day, to say the least. But by the time I'd gotten back to civilization, as close as I can get to it,
in Louisiana.
in Louisiana.
That's hard to find in Louisiana. We have listeners in Louisiana. I'm talking shit because I love you guys. Don't drag me out in the middle of the bayou and feed me to a gator.
There's plenty of bayou down here, by the way.
I've seen it.
Oh,
It's crazy. Honestly, I'd rather be fed to their alligators than their mosquitoes.
oh, you do. Those mosquitoes are monstrous, my friend.
Right.
I've enjoyed the last few months down here. People are amazing. Food's anyway.
Moving on.
So once I was able to get back into town, I'm trying to find out what else happened, right? Because all I got was the little update that came through, and like I said, I was in the middle of nowhere. There's really no service, so I can't like follow along like I guess most of the world did. And when I'm finally able to get back and start like, all right, what happened? What's going on? You're seeing these conflicting stories more or less of just like every other thing that seems to have happened in politics in recent memory. It's what lens are we gonna put this through, right? Who are we gonna blame for this one? Whose fault is what happened? And I just remember trying to like, I just want to know what the fuck happened. That's all I want. I'm not really concerned at this point of who's at fault or who said what to that comes later. I just tell me what happened. I just want the facts. I don't want your
Kevin's like Marvin Gaye. He wants to know what's going on.
right. I don't care about a certain news company's view or reporters.
Don't give me the spin. Give me the facts.
Yeah, just tell me what happened. I need the what, when, where, why, and who, and to what extent. Just tell me that, and then we'll go from there. But all the sites kept using the same buzzwords and kept using the same uh, conclusions of the word I saw the most was insurrection, insurrection, and I'm like, all right, I need you to link it together. Like what happened? Like it's I wasn't getting any facts, and that was very frustrating. And I'm just kind of sitting here. Like I still just didn't know what happened. And then finally, you know, they you get word that all right, well, unfortunately there was loss of life and people were hurt. I didn't really care too much about property damage since they take enough of my tax money, so I'm like, whatever. Couple of broke windows, no big deal.
Considering it is technically our property.
Yeah, And once it was finally over, instead of really getting more facts, I was getting, oh, this is going to be, this is the action we're going to take to, I guess, to get back at what happened. I'm like, well, hold up. Why are we talking more or less revenge? I guess, for lack of a better word, like it was. You got all this finger pointing going on. You start getting reports of people getting banned on social media, censored, this, that, and the third. Twitter blocks Trump's account, and then all these other social media sites follow suit, similar to the same extent. And I was like, all right, like when Will and I first started this podcast, we had the question of censorship, and my response was, and it still is today, I don't believe in any form of censorship. And Will's always quoted as even hate speech is protected speech. And
You do not believe in the freedom of speech unless you believe in the protection of speech you don't agree with. Period.
and that's a hard concept, I feel, for a lot of people to grasp. Now, I certainly don't agree 100% with everything the president says. To be fair, I don't.
Neither do I, and we've been very vocal about that.
Now, to the same extent, there's really no one I don't feel like I agree 100% with on everything.
But when you make politics about a
Hmm.
coin flip, it's bound to be that way. You got one side or the other. Politics is a coin flip, and no one lives in blue or red. Everyone lives, for the most part, everyone lives in somewhere in the for this instance, since I'm talking blue and red, someone lives in a shade. Everyone lives in a shade of purple or gray, if you will.
I remember when the news first broke about all this censoring on the president. A lot of people were, on board, super excited. Oh, oh, finally! And then other people are like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it, and he's almost out of office. Big deal. And my whole thing was just, what about, First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. And then someone gave me the argument, well, these tech giants are private companies. They can make their own rules and this, that, and the third. Like, all right, well, if that's the case, if you truly believe that private businesses can choose their own rules to operate within, well, then why were they forced to close for quarantine?
Why are they getting fined for not making people social distance or wear masks, blah, blah, blah. If it's a private business, it's a private business. You don't get to pick and choose which private business you support their property rights with.
And that was, I thought, an excellent point. Like, a lot of people, like I said, are ecstatic that the president is being censored, and I'm over here like, no, that's not good, because if you can censor, the leader of the free world, what hope did anyone else have?
Exactly. If you can censor the president of the United States of America. Think about that again. The president of the United States of America. He is still the president until January 20th at noon,
Hmm.
unless they remove him from office. And as of the time of this recording, he is still the sitting president of the United States of America, and he has been censored by all of the major social media groups. And there are people trying to also deny if he were to go to do a national address through the normal FCC channels. They're trying to ban that as well. That's the president of the United States. As Kevin noted, the quote unquote or air quotes leader of the free world. If they can censor him, they can censor anyone. Literally anyone. And you're cheering for it. How fucking stupid can you be?
I understand a lot of people don't like him as a person, politician, whatever.
I probably would want to punch the man in the face if I met him individually, but that's not the point.
Right.
Yeah.
When it comes to, people's rights, you really got to put your personal interest and your emotions aside. We're all supposed to have equal protection under the law.
And that's actually talked about not just in one amendment in the Constitution. That's actually mentioned several times.
Mhm. Now, with all the craziness that has gone on these first 3 weeks of 2021, I still haven't, got out of the habit of writing 2020 when I date my forms. So I'm still. That's how
I
fresh we
had to
are
get
into the year.
past that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to get past that myself.
Um, the thing that has really, upset me the most is the hypocrisy. Now,
We're getting close to my full-on territory here. Go ahead, Kevin.
Right. Now, when those protesters or rioters, whatever you want to call them, when those folks stormed the Capitol, members of Congress or senator, politicians, whatever you want to call them, the anger is already clouding my judgment.
I'm not angry.
They got a taste of what the rest of the country has really been dealing with for the majority of 2020. All right, you got a taste of what everyday citizens were having to go through with these violent riots that were breaking out in their city on a daily basis.
In by majority, Democrat-controlled cities,
Right.
mind you.
Now, while a lot of people on, you know, the red side of the aisle were calling for more action to be taken to quell these riots, a lot of people on the other side, a lot of Democrats were, well, it's mostly peaceful. It's, you know, these people are protesting and they have this right and, making excuses essentially.
And we're comparing one protest that turned riot to an entire summer's worth of protests that regularly turned riot. We're talking, one instance versus literal hundreds, right? Including taking over entire sections of multiple cities,
Right.
declaring them autonomous zones. It wasn't the entire protest at the Capitol that ended up, quote on air quotes, storming the Capitol. It was literally a mostly peaceful protest, except for those that went into the Capitol. Whereas the other would be mostly not peaceful, except for those that were, which I will say, and I will 100%, at least for the ones that I was able to get direct eyes on. Here in Mississippi, we had BLM protests and things of that nature. As far as I'm aware, they were 100% peaceful.
Oh, yeah.
And I was very proud of those individuals. Hell, I may not have agreed with everything they had to say, but they said it in a peaceful manner.
I respected their right to say it.
And I respected their right to say it. And I 100% would have protected their right to do it because they did it peacefully.
I do recall there were people who tried to instigate violence during these protests.
Now, I will admit, here in our hometown, Kevin,
Hmm.
there was an individual that was on the opposite side of the spectrum that showed up at our local courthouse when people were protesting the statue,
Hmm.
and he brought a firearm and was intent on instigating a problem. I truly feel like he was.
Oh, absolutely. Had them on video.
And I'm I'm okay with him being carted off like he was.
And I remember there were a handful of, I don't want to use certain morons, I guess, trying to stir things up on social media when people were, I think when they were outside the mall uh, doing the demonstration.
Yes, they were definitely saying some very untrue things and very unsavory things.
Trying to, they were making threats, trying to, we're all gonna come up there and like, hurt people.
But everybody had permission to be there,
Right.
and they were doing it peacefully, and it was cool.
Like I was saying before, the hypocrisy we saw in Washington is you get one riot, and within a week you have 10-foot fences installed and thousands of armed troops deployed to protect you.
Let me give our listeners a bit of perspective on how many National Guardsmen are currently at our country's capital. There are less than 10,000 troops currently in combined Afghanistan and Iraq, or Iraq, however you say it. There are 30,000 plus National Guardsmen currently in Washington, D.C. right now for the inauguration of the, air quotes, most popular president ever elected. Yes, Biden supposedly, and that is my official stance. I don't know, because everyone refused to actually do a real investigation into it because it was a no. But supposedly he had the most votes of any president in the history of the United States. That in and of itself, to me, is suspicious. It'd be one thing to win by a normal margin and then have suspicion of fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Win by normal margin and have suspicion of fraud, I find that easier to believe than have suspicion of fraud and have the largest voter turnout in your favor ever in the history of a country that's been around for over 240 years, 250 years. I'm trying to do math here. But yeah, that in and of itself kind of, without the extra stuff that was brought out that may or may not be true, but was at least, to use the NCIS term, hinky enough to warrant kind of looking into stuff. And I think anybody who's not even a long-term listener, a short-term listener, knows how we feel about multiple coincidences. That's just my 2 cents.
Now, to kind of, again, perspective, going back to the hypocrisy part, within about a week of this incident, like he moved that much personnel within a week or so, and like, wow, that's a lot to coordinate. Anyway,
And on top of that, though, like, there's this thing for people who have been in any kind of law enforcement or security, or even your average individual that's been to a concealed carry course. You get taught this principle called a reasonable escalation of force. You've got pretty much unarmed, quote unquote, rioters that didn't set anything on fire. They broke a couple windows, a couple people got hurt, a couple people died. That does not equate to 30,000 fully trained military members and a 10-foot fence. It just doesn't.
no.
That's either A, overkill, or B, there for a purpose that we're not privy to. And that's honestly where I'm at. Like, that really doesn't make any sense to me. I'm really wondering what else is going on that we're not being told.
I mean, it's like I was saying, it was you see the hypocrisy all of a sudden, because during the summer, part of the fall, when cities were being burnt down and people were losing their homes and their businesses, their property, and in many instances their health and their lives, the response was subpar, to say the least. Um, I mean, almost non-existent, if you will.
Almost to the point of, well, you had it coming.
You know, willingly turned a blind eye in many cases. Of, oh well. And then someone shared a photo the other day that it really kind of summed up how I feel. Mostly, it was after the riot started. You saw a lot of the Democratic Party leaders. Uh, they had some of the traditional African garments on, and they were
I
all,
shared that.
yeah, that was you. That's right. I've seen it a few
That
times.
was me.
I've seen it. They're taking a knee, more or less a silent kind of solidarity, or let's be honest, it was him pandering for votes.
That was a term we heard a lot that this last summer too. I completely forgot about that. We have solidarity with this movement. Solidarity. Everybody was on board with it.
Right. It's one thing to support peaceful protests. Will and I both just mentioned how we did earlier in this episode last summer. Protests, not rioters. Right? There is a very distinct line between the two.
Now, I'll let you finish, but we are not the same.
What do you mean?
Well, if you recall from our first quarantine rant talking about the riots when they first started after George Floyd's death, when the riots and the damage was isolated to the police department there, I had no issue with it. They took their grievance to those that were responsible. And since their grievances by majority weren't heard because the individuals responsible are way too protected due to... See, I'm caveating what I say in this instance, and there's reasons behind it, and I think our listeners understand, but I'm not going to verbalize it. But they took their grievance to those that were responsible in the only way that they could, because the other avenues had been blocked by too many shortcuts, too many ways out, too many air quote loopholes to escape responsibility.
There was no accountability.
Right. You're smelling what I'm stepping in.
I got you.
But when it spilled out into the surrounding community and unrelated businesses and entities and individuals, that's when I had an issue with it.
All right. And I certainly understand that.
Well, Congress, no accountability other than voting. I mean, we've been shit on by left and right for decades. Some of those individuals have been in there, hell, double our lifetimes.
Which is not an exaggeration.
No, and we're not young guys. I'm 33 years old.
32?
And hell, our president-elect has been in politics for 47, 49. I've seen different numbers. I haven't looked it up. It's something like that.
He's going on 48.
He's been in there a really long time.
Let's just round it up to 50.
Nearly 5 decades.
Half a century.
But feels like he can fix everything. Literally said, government has failed you. Yeah, you've been part of it. For half a freaking century, dude. And then you got Skeletor Pelosi. That drunk bitch. I swear to God, that woman is drunk every time I see her on camera. But you were talking about hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the left believes in walls because they've erected a 10-foot wall around the Capitol. They believe walls work with security, you know. Suddenly, police are the good guys and they should be supported, and hurting police officers is bad. That was not a thing last summer.
And not hearing that defund the police no more, are we?
Right. And suddenly rioters are rioters and not mostly peaceful protesters. They're certainly taking this new year, new me thing quite seriously.
Yeah. Now, it's over. Like, you can almost get whiplash from that 180 they did. I mean, it was incredibly quick. But yes, walls and guns will now keep you safe.
Oh, and they suddenly support funding our military.
Yeah. It's just like once they got just a small taste of what so much of the country had to deal with majority of last year, now it's a problem. Now action needs to be taken. Now something needs to be done to ensure these riots stop. And what's their first course of action? Walls and guns.
And censor anyone and everyone that doesn't agree with us. That's dangerous as fuck.
Just wow.
I'm really at a loss here. I don't have any real predictions of where we're gonna go from here. The end of January, we could literally be in another world. To quote REM, it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
Good song.
Right?
That's I think our problems from last year have tagged along with us into this one.
They've come to a head this year. They built and built and built in 2020, and now they're in our face.
Can't say I'm surprised.
I'm not really surprised at all. But I feel like 2020 wasn't the start in any of it.
Oh no.
I feel like 2020 was the straw that broke it.
It's gonna be a long decade.
Agreed. Because a lot of the things that have been a problem for both sides,
Uh-huh.
for those on the left with the defund the police movement, it's no mystery to our listeners that I have my issues with police. I'm not a defunder, but I'm definitely
A reformer.
a reformer, a scrutinizer, in qualified immunity. Make cops carry liability insurance like a doctor. Stop making taxpayers pay for their mistakes through, paying the premium for the city's insurance policies and things of that nature. Make it come out of pensions. If you've got to pay a settlement, it should come out of the individual responsible.
Oh, that's fair.
It's not right for those that pay for the individual to also have to pay for the individual's mistakes when their mistakes are directly towards the people paying for them in the first place. I've got my problems with both sides of the aisle.
Same.
Neither one of them truly believe in the Constitution. They just believe in the Constitution as far as it benefits them.
Up until it stops benefiting them, then it becomes a hindrance.
I mean, the right pushed the Patriot Act just as much as the left.
Use fear to sway the public to support it.
And, I mean, I get why we're where we're at. But if government wasn't involved in the means of us getting our information, i.e., Operation Mockingbird and our media, sorry, had to say it, the American people as a whole would be looking at the government like, hey, why'd you cause these problems? Because our government likes to cause problems and then hand us the solution. I saw a meme earlier. The government is good at breaking your legs and then handing you a crutch and saying, see, without government, you wouldn't be able to walk. I saw one where it showed a guy getting his leg cut off, or he's hanging off of a cliff, and he gets his leg cut off, and the government's handing him his leg as a way to pull him up. handing him a severed leg. Like, see, I helped you with your own tax money. See, I helped you, pulling you up after cutting your leg off. I pulled you up with your own leg. If it wasn't for me, you would have died. But now you're crippled.
Ouch.
So the American people have a lot more in common than they don't. But in order for our government to survive as it stands, it's got to make sure that we see each other as the problem and not it. And that's the way I feel about it.
Well said.
I know this is a longer episode than we've usually put out, but we had a lot to say, and we probably left out more than we put in, to be honest.
Fair.
And we wish we could record every week like we used to, but life gets in the way, and life. I think everybody can understand that life in 2020 and 2021 have not been the kindest. But we do what we can. We enjoy this way too much to let it go. So as long as you guys are with us, we're going to keep trying to put out content and give you something to listen to. But as always, we don't ever want you to take us as experts. We don't want you to ever think what we say is fact. I want you to look it up. Kevin wants you to look it up. We want you to go find this stuff out for yourself. Draw your own conclusions. Don't draw the conclusions we lead you to. We just want you to think for yourselves. Don't think what the media tells you to think. Don't think what your Congress men and women tell you to think. We want you to do your own research, form your own opinions. Trust, but verify.